In Tripura, for example, it's the same culture. In Odisha, also the same culture. So we shared the culture of private tuition, shadow education equally, but Bengal's is top. We asked why do you go to the school?
How does this pressure shape students' experience in school, and how much does it end up feeding into the growing demand for private coaching?
Very concept of the education, the concept of understanding important things in the education. So that is completely going missing in the entire system.
Hello and welcome to the In Focus podcast. I'm Devyanshi from the Hindu's Data Point team. Today, we're talking about how private coaching has grown into a parallel education system in India. It is no longer just extra help after school. For many kids, it has become the backbone of learning. In the last 7 years, the share of students taking tuition has gone up at all levels, from primary school to middle school, secondary, and higher secondary. Among rural girls in higher secondary school, coaching has shot up by 12 percentage points. That's double the rise seen among urban boys. The numbers are even starker in the east. In West Bengal and Tripura, nearly 75 to 80% of children now go to coaching classes. And it starts alarmingly early. Even at the kindergarten level, nearly one-third of kids in Odisha, Tripura, and West Bengal are already in tuition. Families are also spending heavily, in some cases, more on tuition than on school itself. So, why are parents turning so heavily to private coaching? What does it say about the state of our schools? And how is this reshaping education in India? To help us make sense of this, we're joined by Sabir Ahamed, Program Director at the Pratichi Institute. The Pratichi Trust has been working to combat illiteracy and the lack of schooling in India for decades. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much.
So let's start with the fact that eastern states have some of the highest rates of private tuition in the country, much higher than the national average. Why do you think tutoring has become such a deep-rooted part of the culture here?
This is very important questions. We should deal with it. Um, the data which is recently published by the NSSO is not surprise to us because those who are studying this phenomenon for long, actually, we know this fact. Eastern India is much ahead. And among the eastern state, if you see the data also, disaggregated data state-wise, West
Right.
Bengal stand, exceptionally high prevalence of the private tuition uh, in 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 India. Private tuition is also called as a shadow education. Sometimes we call it, and this shadow education is actually overshadowing the entire education system in India, and Bengal is much ahead in this case. And as you rightly pointed out, it has a long heritage. West Bengal has a deep-rooted culture of private tuition, set by its long history of educational reform, dates back to the colonial time and the Bengal Renaissance. The English-educated Bhadralo class always, pursued education for administrative employment, and they wanted to be on the side of administration. So the high aspiration for education was there in from the colonial time. A lot of educational reform, educational institute also set up during that time. And after the partition, the refugees also who came, despite all kind of hardship, they view education as a vital social capital amid material loss. So that was the two things, this kind of motivated people to give a much importance to education. Over the time, the Bhadralok emerged as an influential group, although they are a minority group, setting the additional educational aspiration across social classes. This shared ambition among the parents has contributed to the widespread and entrenched practice of private tuition in the state. If you go back to the literature of those time, you'll find there are even from the very the Vajralok Bengali Jamindar classes, you'll find the in the literature you'll find the mention of the private tutor, helping their kids, especially when women were educated, because the education among the women were started much earlier as compared to the other state in Bengal. So this high prevalent. And what about the Eastern India? Why Eastern India? Because we share the same culture, like in Tripura, for example, it's the same culture. In Odisha also the same culture. So we shared the culture of private tuition, shadow education equally, but Bengal's is top, is on the top. So we can call it safely a tuition philic province, where although the data, and we are calling it near universal and very unique, as you rightly pointed out, that it start very early, and the out of expenditure for this is very huge and adversely affecting the social groups. If I elaborate, like for example, I'm a part of couple of studies for the last few years on this issue. The cost for pursuing science education is much
Right.
higher, because you have to pay around close to 3,000 per month for a secondary school to pursue science. That is number one. I'll come again about the recent phenomena. I am talking about now the historical, and people won't believe that you are not going to the tuition. It's so universal across the class. So it's even the affluent family, they do send their children, and the poor people who also, there are different excuse for that. The rich people say that they don't have to time to teach their children at home, and poor people, they say we can't afford to teach because we are illiterate, unschooled sometimes. So it's become a apart from the social groups, it's across the class
Right.
phenomenon in Bengal. Yes.
As you mentioned, Bhadralok, which means middle class, right?
Milk. Yes, yes.
So, could we look at this culture of private tutoring as more than just a extra class, as a way of family seeing education driving social mobility? For many parents, especially in rural or poorer households, tuition isn't just about marks, it's an investment in their children's future, even in their own security.
Right, right.
Do you see that playing out?
Absolutely, like as I said earlier, that it's a high educationally the society is highly aspirational, and but why people from the elite school also go to the private tutor, because they are encouraging, even in my cases, my I see the in a school diary, it is written clearly two things. One, that the school teacher can't take the tuition from a tuition from the school teacher, and
Right.
secondly, they implement, you are paying tuition fee in the school, why you are paying the fees to the other teacher also. But despite this, across the class we can see that people are training, and it's a path dependent character actually. Sometimes we'll see why they go to the private tutors. If we see from the data also, I'll tell little later, but it's become a culture, and people don't, like for me, my son is in class 7. If I share this information to the other parents, either they will say that you are lying, it's not possible to do well without the private tuition. So these kind of things, repeatedly we can hear from from the guardian and parents.
Sir, West Bengal officially banned school teachers from giving private tuitions way back in 2001. Yet,
Right.
more than 2 decades later, it's obvious the practice is still widespread. How do you explain this gap between what the rules say and what actually happens on the ground?
One thing I would like to start with, although we have Right to Education Act, enacted into the long ago, but and it's mandates free and compulsory education. Despite that, the cost of private tuition range, various kind of things, and there is also notification in West Bengal for long, that both for the doctor and for the teacher, that you can't take private tuition. But despite the fact, and this constraint, this percent, there are different type of private tutors in West Bengal. I think it's elsewhere also. One is independent teacher, that is about more than 55%, and teachers tutor. who are the teachers, and they are in the high demand, because if I am teaching in a reputed government schools, my demand for taking tuition is very high. Sometimes they force that you come to us after class, so that will be more beneficial, etc. And sometimes students who are also pursuing courses in a graduate level, they become a teacher. So this is the different kind of private tutor. But why that is? One is the monitoring system in the education in Bengal. Actually, earlier there is it's elsewhere also, the inspector, the kind of people who used to monitor all these kind of things, is is invisible. So there is no scrutiny of this phenomenon. And parents also support, if officer approach to any duties or the student, whether he or she takes tuition from the your school teacher, they immediately deny, because they know, just to save the teacher also, they don't clearly articulate, yes, I do take. So that is one problem. And despite the fact the independent teacher has vehemently opposed why the school teacher is taking tuition, because to perpetuate the system of the private tuition, the independent teacher is, there is a demonstration, there is a public meeting against this. But despite that, government could not do anything. And I contacted the district education officer in a couple of districts. The number of complaint has submitted to them about this, and this is absolutely low, because parent does not want to raise concern about this issue. So that is the main problem.
So there's also research showing that schools themselves often become marketplaces for private tuition,
Yeah.
where parents go looking for tutor contacts, teachers compete and even poach students, and in some cases, private schools tie up with coaching companies. Can you walk us through how this plays out and how schools justify playing this kind of a dual role?
Yeah. That is. Thank you very much for bringing the mm, role played by the markets. Especially after the COVID, when we all went to the digital learning and taking advantage of these many app-based, and from the very nursery, I am so disturbed by saying, I don't want to take the name of this company, but if you want to improve your spelling, there is a company. If you want to improve your mathematical ability, there is a company. And they are tying up with the school from the very beginning of the schooling system. Why? If you read a lot, if you teach well, the student can pick up the spelling, can do math well. Why we need to so a huge market, especially both at primary secondary level and also at the secondary level, especially for the competitive examination like NEET and other competitive examination. And they're justifying, even they're inviting this private school and government school, that we don't have much infrastructure to teach the student, through the digital media, etc. So they're inviting them as a part. You will find even in Kolkata, the earlier what we used to see, that private tutor are distributing pamphlets or leaflet after the every academic session outside. But now big banner, big billboard inside the school inviting, enroll for these courses. And one is for the physics, chemistry and biology, one for the mathematics, one for your literature. And the market has emerged. It's a big companies who are investing on that. Even in Kolkata, there is the name of the particular place has changed into named after a particular coaching center, because number of people are coming to that center. I'm so surprised. It's a very reputed place. I'm not taking the name. And even the bus conductor is calling the name as a place of that area, of that coaching center. So the flow of people are coming, and you will see how the parents are sitting outside, and this is happening even in the all reputed school. So we asked, why do you go to the school? There are some certain answer that laboratory is there. Sometimes you need to be registered there, but the classes are empty. So very surprising, and the market is playing a very big role to allure children, the kind of dream. and this is also linked to the one of the theoretical aspect of what Professor Amartya Sen called the country of first five. Always the high level of competitiveness among the student to get only good marks, not focusing on the learning ability, not focusing on the expansion of the human capabilities. They are like a machine, only going for the marks.
Sir, as you mentioned about the entrance exams like NEET and JEE, correct me if I'm wrong, but school teachers are usually trained to handle textbook learning, not the kind of intense uh, preparation needed for exams like NEET and JEE. Plus, parents put enormous pressure on children to crack these entrance tests.
Right, right.
How does this pressure shape students' experience in school, and how much does it end up feeding into the growing demand for private coaching?
Yeah, now, most important, as I said, that there is a departure from the instrumental value of education. There is a distinction between instrumental value of education and the intrinsic value of the education. The most focus is now on the instrumental value. I have to learn something to crack the need, not on the fundamental aspect of the education. So that is become the parental pressure. The number of suicide is happening because of this enormous, you must have heard about the coaching factory in a particular city in India, Kota. So that Kota is now everywhere. That
Right.
all the companies who originated in Kota, you will find every corner of the city. So it's become a doorstep service of this coaching center. And coupled with that is the enormous parental pressure. You need to be cracking the NEET and other competitive
Right.
examination. So what we are losing, the market is creating demands that you can, and they are the way they advertise that that these people. But if you see the percentage of there is another model here with a low cost people, low cost fee, but they are also doing a very important result in those. But they have focused on the collective learning of the student with a low cost teacher. But in this coaching institution, the teachers who are trained in IIT, either it's the same on us that who is graduated from IIT, IIM, etc. They are into the shadow education system in the coaching industry. So the what we are losing, very concept of the education, the concept of understanding important things in the education. So that is completely going missing in the entire system, and a lot of pressure coming from the parents, and coupled with that is the market.
Correct. Sir, I've also read that even parents who send their kids to private schools,
Hmm.
they are already paying higher fees, often still turn to private tutoring. Some even say that they can call a tutor and ask them to reshuffle topics, something they'd never dare to ask a school teacher.
Yeah.
What does this tell us about limits of private schooling as a solution in West Bengal?
I sometimes I ask, what are the reason for discontinuing education? So often they say we can't afford to pay private tuition. That's why I dropped out in the rural area. Uh,
Okay.
it's a very surprising. It's become a, although it's a in some like at least till is the age of 14 is a free education, but it's a widespread feeling that private tuition is the integral part of education system. What are the excuse from the teacher side? You have to also go to that phenomenon. There is a
Mhm.
sheer shortage of teacher in the school.
Right.
At the secondary level, they will not call it sheer shortage of school, teacher. I say it is sheer shortage of school. If we only say about the secondary school, nearly 13% shortage of teacher in the secondary school. It's a huge. So people's and teacher ratio is not very favorable for the teacher. So most of the time they could not complete the syllabus. So if I share some of the findings, about more than 50% students say I take tuition to score better marks in the exam, and it's aligned with the competitiveness in the class, and followed by I take tuition to understand the topics taught in class better. They say teachers come and there is no such accountability, responsibility in many cases because lack of inspection, lack of monitoring of the system, and the self motivation also that has also lost among the government school, and as also many says both the first generation learner and the upper middle class, etc. Parents are not able to guide us in the study because of the syllabus, because lack of time, etc. etc. This is the main reason, and also followed by I don't get adequate assistance from my school teacher. They don't complete the syllabus on time. This is almost 28%. So this is the reason why they choose private tuition. This is the this is coming from the student, but for the private school also, as you rightly said, if they're paying for an upper primary, it's like 7 to 8 thousand per month to the school, they are landed up paying 10,000 and above 10,000 to the private tuition, because now you are not going to the teacher only, one private tutor. You are going to the multiple. Even for the vernacular, for example, here Bangla in Odisha and in Tripura also Bangla. There are science in there are most demanded subjects is mathematics and English. This is the two top subjects where tuition are needed. But in some cases, at least 5 to 6 tutor, it amounts to for English medium school, etc. It amounts to 10,000. But in for the rural people, it also goes up.
So, like you said, coaching is kind of stepping in to fill kind of feedback and responsive gap that schools themselves can't provide.
That
So,
is, primarily for the government school. What is happening in the government school, the sheer shortage of teacher, and
right.
that's become a clear role here, that they couldn't finish that classes, etc. And that is on another reason.
Right. So, do you think this reliance on tuition undermines the role of formal schooling itself, making it feel secondary rather than central?
Yeah, that's why if you see the um, mm, attendance seat in a school, for example,
Right.
they will be available in the private coaching center or to the private tutor, but even in the rural area, after the secondary, they had some kind of adjustment with the schools that I will not. Or ma'am, I will not attend the class because I have to crack the NEET. So please excuse me, even from the
Right.
English medium elite class. So there is some kind of adjustment with the school too, because the school will get benefits if she cracks the top rank in, so they allow them to. So the formal learning, it's becoming more less important than the private coaching.
So, lastly, given how deeply shadow education has taken root in both government and private schools, what should policy actually aim to do? Should the goal be to regulate and manage it, to replace it with better support inside schools, or to simply accept private tuition as a permanent part of our education system?
So I say huge injustice to student. Sometimes I jokingly say, why don't you close the school and recognize this coaching center and private institutes? So the burden of learning is not on the student is double. No, he has to attend
Right.
school and then going back to no time for play. It's very difficult to deal. It's a big blow to the fundamental of education, which is advocated by the all the philosophers, for example, from Rabindranath Tagore to Amartya Sen, about the intrinsic value of education. Now it's become a factory. This is the extension of a factory, and now, like Eastern India, in India itself, there is a concept called school society. Now it's a we can call it a school society instead tutored society. We are living in a tutored society instead of school society. What school provide beside learning a scope to interact with your friend, share the joy, how to deal with the coping mechanism, etc., resilience, etc. Many things. But what teaching tutors and only you have to revise. You have to go through the drill, mock trace. It's a kind of mechanical drills, na. So you are losing in a long run the value of education through this thing. How to deal with that? Since that is very much entrenched in our society, is very difficult to regulate, difficult to only by enactment of the law. So, but we have to start somewhere, and we have to educate people how, what kind of benefits you are getting through this support. So I say so what, and also you have to examine the content provided through the coaching center. Sometimes is very, because who are giving the tuition in the coaching center, those who are not getting formal job, they are become the tutor. So quality wise it's not much greater. So we have also asked our duties or the student, so and examining the content of that is not up to have a good mark, but still people are fond of, there might be some good tutor who are the government teachers or taught in the school long, but in largely that is not contributing. And without tutor, how much extra you are getting? Maybe the children has capacity to get 90% in the exam, he or she is getting 92%. For that 2% you are investing a huge amount of money, which is a huge out of pocket expense for the parent. Especially in the rural area, the cost of pursuing science education is become a huge burden on them. So I think it's a difficult, as I said, there is a law and regulation only in paper. There is no complaint from the parents, very few complaint from the parents.
Correct.
There is a protest from the independent tutor to ban the tuition by the teachers, but the families are not giving testimonies to the fact. They said no, teachers help us, it's not in the exchange of money. This is a complex and complicated things, and it is it's a big blow to the education system, which is not in align with what Rabindranath Tagore, what Amartya Sen has propagated.
Thank you, sir. That was very, very insightful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I think it's useful. Thank you.